Welcome to Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian, and I honor your presence here today. In this episode, I wanted to share with you how I personally practice Reiki. So I've had my master's certification for 2 years, and I made it a point to get my certification, my education, my attunement, all of the preparatory process from an instructor that was legitimate and listed on the Reiki.org website. Because I like to be rather purist in the way that I do things, and I think that you don't have to look too far to find a little bit too much stuff on the periphery of Reiki where I don't want to be a part of that. I want to keep it pure, and I want to keep it simple, and I want to keep it effective. So I felt comfortable choosing my instructor, Lynn, and I also have to give equal credit to my brother Bob, who has been a Reiki practitioner for more than 2 decades. I think it's almost 30 years, close to 30 years. And although I didn't get my certification from him, he was definitely the one that laid the foundation for my increasingly gaining interest in Reiki and going from a point of I don't really even know what Reiki is and I don't have time to hear this right now, many years ago, to so what's this Reiki thing about, to wow, I can really see the effects of the Reiki you've just administered to me. I think I want to learn this too. So I have to give credit to both Lynn, my instructor, and Bob, my inspiration. I'm also careful with Reiki that I do not do anything that I think could compromise or contaminate it. When I'm doing Reiki, I'm going to be only focused on doing Reiki, okay, with the addition of chanting. I'll get into that in a minute. But in other words, I do not divert or divide my presence, the energy of my attention, onto other things while I'm doing Reiki. I'm very orthodox about that. I'll never compromise on that. And that also falls in line with what the Buddha taught, the teaching of do what you are doing. Be fully present to the task in which you are currently engaged. So when I'm doing Reiki, I'm doing Reiki. I'm not doing anything else. And also, there are some practitioners I'm aware of that may invite a spiritual entity into their practice of Reiki, or even their teaching of Reiki. They will bring in a spirit guide, so to speak, and I'm not okay with that. I know too much to be okay with that. There are good spirits and there are malevolent spirits, and this is a fact no matter how anyone happens to feel about it. And so if we are ignorant and unaware and perhaps foolish or careless, we leave the door open for spirits who are of a nature we would rather not encounter or have to deal with. I don't want to be affected by them, and I would never want anyone that I'm involved in giving Reiki to be affected by them. So I do not invoke any entity or spirit of any kind, and I highly discourage anyone from doing it. And I highly encourage anyone who is looking to study Reiki to make sure that the instructor you're about to choose does not do that. That's my advice for you. So avoid it. Now, how do I practice Reiki? Technically, there's 4 different platforms or facets that I administer Reiki in. First one is in person. I do a 90-minute basic length session, but of course it can be a little shorter or longer according to what the client desires. And in a session that I do in person physically, then I'm also going to enhance that session with Tibetan healing bowls and Bhutanese incense and chanting, along with a healing frequency background music of usually 432 or 528 megahertz. It can vary, but those are the two I commonly use. And then the Reiki client or recipient, whichever you prefer, would be lying down on their back in complete comfort and peace, and then around halfway through or 2/3 through through the session, I would ask the person to roll over onto their other side. But I don't do that many in-person Reiki sessions because almost anyone I know who is up for doing Reiki is not anywhere near me physically. I live in the northern Thai countryside, away from everyone I know. So I don't have that opportunity too often, only with some local Thais or a friend that may be passing through for a while that needs Reiki, but not on a regular basis at all. What I do almost all the time is what most practitioners call distance Reiki. I have a personal preference to not call it distance Reiki because distance means nothing in Reiki. It would be like saying distance prayer or distance internet. It has nothing to do with the effect of the Reiki or the engagement of the Reiki. So instead of calling it distance Reiki, which, I guess I'm a stickler for meaning and the pure meaning of things, I don't want to call the Reiki that I do remotely, meaning somewhere off away from where the other person is. I don't want to call that distance. I don't want to accentuate that meaninglessness. So remote meaning I'm not where you are, but I'm administering the Reiki to you. So I do remote Reiki 95% of the time. I also do remote Reiki online in a not formal, but a scheduled session so that the recipient is online with me in real time. See, again, internet, really irrelevant to time. I may be in Thailand, the recipient might be in Germany or something, but with internet, there's no real time factor. And there's also no real distance factor. That's why I don't like to use the word distance. But I'll do the remote Reiki session online with the person there, and that is a scheduled session. When I do remote Reiki on my own without the client being online with me, then I do it when it suits my schedule, because it doesn't matter what time I make the energy deposit of Reiki into that person's energy field. It's just like I'm sending a PayPal payment of energy, so I will do that on my own time. But if it is assuming that it's a session that this person has requested and arranged, for example, I want 3 sessions per week, 45 minutes each, for 6 months or something like that, then whenever I complete that session, I will send a notification to the person to let them know, session number 16, 45 minutes complete. I will acknowledge that I have completed and performed to completion their sessions. The other way that I do Reiki is that I better show you. I better pick up the phone and show you this. This is my Reiki Altar. And as you can see here, I have a Himalayan crystal Sri Yantra. This is called a Sri Yantra. A Sri Yantra is basically a 3-dimensional mandala. When you're looking at a mandala, you are looking at the direct overview in 1 dimension of what the Sri Yantra is in 3 dimensions. And this is my Reiki altar, and I have this traditional Thai temple tray. This is a tray that would be used to bring offerings to the monks and nuns at temples. And so I have my Sri Yantra crystal, Himalayan quartz, and this is very, very powerful, sacred, and pure. And what I do is I imbue this with Reiki. I Reiki this crystal, which then emanates that energy out to all of my Reiki recipients. Okay? And then I will frequently recharge this. I also initiate this to be a transceiver, to receive the divine Reiki energy, to then dispense it to all of the people on my Reiki list. So that is one of the ways that I do Reiki as well. So those are the 4 ways. Now, sorry that I'm having to adjust the phone there with my hand. So how do I actually do a remote Reiki session? Well, the first thing that I do is I invoke the Holy Spirit. I get connected with God. Define that as you need to for yourself, okay? I connect with God to the fullest of my being, and I invite the Holy Spirit to bless and protect and guide and perfect the Reiki session for the recipient in thankfulness for their highest good in the most benevolent outcome of the divine will. That's the first thing I do. Why do I do that? Because I want to make sure that the Reiki session I do is protected and guided by divinity. I don't take it all upon myself. It's not all about me, me, me. I am asking the Supreme Being to oversee and to assist in the entire session. Okay? I also ask the Holy Spirit to make me a perfect conduit of this holy Reiki energy. Because I'm not perfect either, and I want to be purified. I want to be made sparkling pure as a conduit, because this Reiki does not come from me. Any Reiki does not come from the sender, the practitioner. It's not coming from them. It's a divine energy that we are accessing and serving as a conduit to send to you. I have no control. A practitioner has no control over how your soul, your higher self, receives and uses and implements that Reiki energy, that divine love Reiki. Nor should we have any intention to try and affect it or meddle with it, because we can't. So not only is the practitioner a conduit, a conductor of the energy, but not the source, but also it is very important, at least to me and any conscientious practitioner, it's very important to respect the free will of the recipient. What I mean by that is, in order for a practitioner, and I follow this very strictly, in order for me to administer Reiki to anyone, that person needs to have asked me to do it for them, because their free will reigns supreme. I'll do another episode later on that mentions that, but I'll give you a teaser now. Anything that attempts to compromise, overpower, usurp, or deny your free will is impure and probably evil. So I don't want anything to do with commandeering somebody's free will or overriding somebody's free will, because it's totally against the divine nature of creation. Because divinity respects your free will. The supreme being that is all existence and from which all existence arises respects your free will. So I'm going to respect your free will too. I'm going to follow the correct Reiki protocol and not throw Reiki around as I see fit. I may not do that. Okay? So the recipient has to request it, number one. Having said that, there are occasionally certain situations or the way things play out that the person didn't necessarily come up and say, "Hi, will you please give me Reiki? What are your arrangements?" That might not happen. It might just kind of unfold as being quite obvious they need it in a conversation with them, and then just let them know that, if you were not aware, I am a practitioner and I do Reiki. That's it. I go no further than that. In other words, I will let you know that I do Reiki so that you know I do Reiki. That's as far and as proactive as I'll go. If you don't feel compelled to do it, if you don't feel compelled to request it, if you're not comfortable with it for any reason, no problem. And I'm fine with it. Because I would only want people who already have decided they want it and they are comfortable with it and they are willing to take one step and ask for it. Then that's consent. That's respecting their free will. The other thing is that the recipient must be open and willing and receptive to the Reiki. If there is resistance and blockage on the part of that person, even if they have asked for it, but then they're blocking it, that's not gonna be good for the effect of the Reiki. You need to be open to it. If you're gonna go to a doctor and ask the doctor for their prognosis and treatment, and then they administer the treatment and you resist it and fight it and go against it, what's the point? So it has to be respecting the free will, requested, and openly receptive. So getting back to the process, I ask the Holy Spirit to purify and prepare me. I ask the Holy Spirit to bless, guide, direct, and perfect the entire Reiki session. And it's all in thankfulness for the recipient's highest good and the most benevolent outcome of the divine will, because I understand and acknowledge that I have no control over how the Reiki is used by the person. It may be used for physical ailments, emotional imbalances, mental instability, or trauma, soul issues, or all of the above. All I'm doing is serving as a conduit to deposit the Reiki energy into their energetic bank account, so to speak, metaphorically. Then I will write the sacred Reiki symbols over the palms of my hand. There are 6 standard ones that come with Reiki mastership. There are 3 with Reiki level 1 and 2. If you complete Reiki level 2, you can administer Reiki, and you would have 3 symbols to use. If you go higher to the master level, then you have 6, and also you can then begin to teach. And so I do the symbols over the palms of my hands, and then I use this Reiki pillow, which I designed myself, and thank you to Nietzsche, my very good friend here, who is an excellent seamstress that made them. Comes with a removable, washable silk cover and the official Reiki logo, adorned in purple because it's the color of the highest frequency, the divine frequencies. So I use this to rest my hands on. So I use this to rest my hands on when I do the remote Reiki. I'm going to keep the identity of my Reiki clients respected and private. So I'm just going to use this as a general sample. I have, if the person is a regular Reiki recipient of mine, a client who I know I'm going to be doing several sessions for, or ongoing, then I will make a laminated printout photo of their face with their name on it. I laminate it for durability and wear and tear, so it doesn't get affected by humidity or sweaty hands or anything, if it gets damp or anything like that. So I keep it nice and durable and clean. And then I use the person's face and name kind of as a spiritual address. If you're sending somebody an email, it's so-and-so at so-and-so. So when you're sending Reiki, you need to visualize that person. You technically do not need a picture with their name. However, why not? It's so much more powerful and effective for me anyway, to do that. So I make the extra step and I do that. And then I take the person's photo, I place it onto the pillow, and it is then on their picture that I lay my two hands and begin the Reiki session. I've also, if I didn't mention it, after I put the symbols on the palms of my hand, I also then put all of the symbols on their photograph. Okay, so we've established that I guess you could say ignition. I've opened up and ignited the symbols that help the Reiki to be effective and to flow, and I do that on my hands and on the recipient's photograph to establish that connection and fluidity of connection. And then during the Reiki session itself, I will be either having a healing frequency such as 528 or 432, sometimes 936. Anyway, there's a few, but I will have at least I will have that frequency playing beside me on my laptop to have that frequency audibly affecting the whole space. The space which I also, in case I didn't mention that, I have also blessed and purified and protected along with the Holy Spirit the space all around me, that anything that is impure or contrary to divinity be gone from it and it be protected during the Reiki session. You know, because the Japanese have a word that's called byoki, B-Y-O-K-I, byoki. Byoki is, you could loosely translate it as toxic negative energy residue. And there are some people's houses that are full of it because of the negative toxic energy that's constantly being resonated by the people in that house. All the yuck thinking, speaking, and doing that unfortunately a lot of people do. You can be assured that is seeping into the very woodwork of that house, literally like dust bunnies and filth all throughout that house. Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you sure know it when you walk in if you're even half awake. So that's called byoki. So even where people were, or if somebody had maybe somebody came and visited me and there was some wonky energy going on there and now they're gone and I'm like, well, I'm going to do a Reiki session. I need to cleanse this space. I also need to cleanse the space of my own junk. I'm human too. I have negative, impure thoughts and just like anyone. I'm no living saint. So I need to purify the space of any residue or presence that I don't want. And I just say anything that's impure or contrary to divinity. That pretty much covers it all. And that's protected. So I will then do the Reiki session with the healing frequency going on the whole time at a minimum. And when I do that, I will usually chant Aum, Aum, Aum at the pitch that I'm playing. And most of the time, though, what I do is I'll put on a sacred chant, such as Mula Mantra or Padmasambhava Mantra or the Gayatri Mantra or the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic or something sacred, pure, and powerful that I will chant repeatedly over the Reiki session the whole time. So what I'm doing is I am imbuing the Reiki with the sacred chant. So I'm using the presence and the time and the engagement of the Reiki to the fullest extent of benefit that I know how. I'm fully present. I don't allow myself to be distracted by other things while I'm doing Reiki. And I'm chanting over the person while sending them the Reiki. I'll do this for whatever was the length of the session, and then I will seal their Reiki session with a blessing in thankfulness for their highest good, in the most benevolent outcome of the divine will. And then I'll send them a notification letting them know that I have completed session number whatever. So that's an overview of how I do Reiki. Um, now you know what I mean if I say remote Reiki, or a remote session online, or an in-person session, or the Reiki Altar. The Reiki Altar is the one that I will do for, I guess you could say, pro bono. If I offer to do Reiki for somebody just as a kind deed, and they're not um, offering anything in return, I will give them that one, um, and occasionally maybe a remote session. But I only have so much energy and time myself too, so I reserve my remote Reiki sessions for the people that arrange to have, you know, a formal series of sessions done with me, and keep in balanced exchange with that. So anyway, I think you get the gist of how I do Reiki, why I do it the way I do it. You will find that each practitioner is a little bit different. You know, your own personal style will come out over time. I don't do Reiki the way I just described it. Now that I do it is not exactly the way I did it when I first started out 2 years ago, because then I had ideas of what I thought would be the right and the best way, etc., etc. And then after practicing for 2 years, that's kind of not necessary, and this is bypassed by that, and this is way more effective than that. So I've just kind of honed it and polished it since then, and this is where I am now in how I practice, subject to revision whenever something better occurs to me. But this is the best that I can do right now, and that's the way I do it. Hey, thank you very much for stopping by today, Brother Owl's Garden. I very much appreciate your presence, and I hope that today's episode has been informative and meaningful and helpful to you. And I will see you again very soon. And always remember to abide in thankfulness for your highest good, in the most benevolent outcome of the divine will.